What's the motivation for seeking after the higher truth? No more pain, no more suffering, no more fears, no more attachments to the world. You're free. So the real motivation is freedom. Freedom from pain and suffering. Normally people get on the spiritual path because they're suffering too much. They've struck the bottom of the barrel. They can't stand it anymore and they need something else. There must be something else. The pain and suffering of a life, this life is too difficult. It's too much. Now the animal can't think that way. The raccoon isn't going around and, say he gets chased after another animal, he goes through some fear, and then he starts to think, God, why am I in this raccoon body? I really need to get out of this. I need to break through my fears. The raccoon does not think that way. A human has a higher intellect that can consider, we'll call it quote unquote higher goals of life. So I really admire that person who has begun to work out those four things in their life, to really soften them, to release them. Because at some point, you can release all of those once and for all, where you're no longer attached to the four primary, where, as an example, when Swami Purna renounced long, long ago, I don't know, probably my guess is about around 200 years ago, let's say, Swami Purna renounced his kingship. He was going to rule a kingdom. He was a prince. He took off his diamond earring, which at this point today would be worth millions of dollars. He put it on his dresser or whatever, and he left like around midnight. He left his palace and walked away from all the riches and all the power. Didn't take anything with him, and he walked into the Himalayas, and he traveled around. And he didn't eat. He didn't have to sleep. He didn't have to. He didn't have any fear. He didn't have desire for sex. He didn't have any of them. He's completely beyond animal, completely, and had merged with the absolute truth. He was and is a representation of that. You ask me sometimes, why are you so devoted to Swami Purna? Because he's the only one I know that has embodied the absolute truth of reality. And so,
there aren't that many.
It's so extraordinary rare, because think about how entrenched those four desires are in our system. They're part of our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
They're in our blood, right? It's not as easy to sort of snap. Imagine if you want to face a cobra. And Swami Purna, when he went out into the wilderness, into the Himalayas, he had a couple of assistants at one point where he wanted to perform Rasayana, which is putting this mixture of gold and silver and mercury and other dangerous metals into his bloodstream to transform him so he would be impervious to cold and heat and poison. Because people had tried to poison him before. So he had them put these metals, in here, right? Different locations that they would open his body up and put the metals into his bloodstream. And then the only other test was then, okay, we'll got to see if this works. So then they found a cobra. He puts his arm up to the cobra. Cobra bites it, and he waits. And he sees, okay, let's see if the body dies or not. Not an ounce of fear. Right? And nothing happened to his body. He was impervious. And he traveled through the Himalayas, which, by the way, gets down to like -40, -50 degrees Fahrenheit at least, and unaffected by the cold. He traveled through the Sahara Desert, unaffected by the heat. So a being who has transcended all animalistic qualities, who has gone above and beyond, who has merged with what Swami Rama called the absolute truth. So